Alright, so let's head over to the matrix. Right here you can see in this matrix tab every mapping that is happening in your patch, okay? For this patch there's quite a lot, not that much, but quite some mappings. We can see in our source column right here, envelope 2, amount is mapped, okay, that much, 42 amounts. So there's no unit, it's just 42. To the destination of the filter cutoff in type, okay, it's 2 directions, in bipolar it's called, in 2 directions. And let's just leave that for now. So you can see LFO1 is mapped with this amount of 27 to B warp, oscillator B warp, the mod. And every mapping that you do in here is being represented in this matrix. So this is a nice way where you can get an overview what you have mapped in your patch, or you load up a patch that someone else created and you can take a look at the matrix and see, okay, he did this and that. Or you can actually go in there and change those settings more precisely based on those knobs. Also, very important, if we initialize the patch right here, when we map something like an LFO to, let's say, the panning, you can see it goes in both directions by default. Let's delete that. Let's turn the volume, for example, lower and map this to this one. So you can see it's only going in the right direction. If we now turn this to there, you can see, again, to the right direction. If we turn this to 50%, again, right direction, even though this one is at center, okay? So based on what we're doing right now and in which knob we are mapping, it either uses one direction by default or 2 direction by default. And you can change this by holding Alt and Shift on your keyboard and clicking on this mod or map button or indicator right here. Same goes for this one. You can go back and forth. Or you can just go into the matrix, see, okay, LFO1 A volume is unipolar, one direction, it's called unipolar. You can click on that, oh, now it's bipolar, and you can see, level is being mapped in both directions. Same goes for the panning right here. You can change the amount. Okay, still a lot. Now we're getting less. So as you can see, when I turn this up to all the way right here, which looks like it's fully automating, it's actually only automating 52% or 52 units, 52%. I can increase that much more, and it's going in a area where it actually isn't affecting the panning anymore, because the panning is all the way to right already. So you have to understand that. If you go to this value, you can see, okay, it's 61, right? So when I'm playing the patch now, you have this indicator right here that is actually showing the precise current position. So now it's actually at this point, even though it's modulating in between and forth. When you take a look at that, you can see this blue point, this blue square that is moving from left to right. But it's not that obvious to see. If you take a look at the matrix, it's easier to see how this behaves. And it's just looking pretty cool also, I think. You have this kind of graph that is showing right here, which is showing the behavior in the past. So you have this indicator, okay, it's kind of moving like a saw, like a sine. It's going up and down and up and down and up and down. Just a way to look at this in a different way. And then we have something like the curve. And if you drag and drop, you can move that in 2 directions. And this is how we can change, again, the way the modulation works. And it's very similar to this one right here. You can actually compare this one by one to that. So you have your input and your output signal, okay? It's just a basic X, Y coordinate thing right here. So if we turn this down, so it's going up and down fast again. So up and down, exponentially. And there we're going logarithmically. So you can compare this, if you're into coding, you can compare this with those CSS transition attributes like ease in and ease out. So it's pretty similar. It's going fast there and fast back, fast there, fast back, and then it's spending more time in the end transition endpoint right here, and there it's spending more time at the original position. Okay, control and click on that, and you can reset that. Next up, we have something called mod, and this is just don't be confused by the star symbol right here. Star is just default, so it's working how you expect it to work. If you put this to invert, you can see the volume isn't changing at all. It's inverting the modulation. And let's just take a look at this this explanation tab right here. It says determines how the two modulation sources or slider, if no modulation source is assigned, interact. So in this case, we have something like a source. So you can see the two modulation sources, and right there we have the auxiliary source, okay? And the auxiliary source is something how you can modulate the modulation. So it's one step further. It's pretty much inception in modulation terms. So let's take a look at this. I want to use the amplitude for that one, and we want to make it unipolar. So it's moving up and down. It's quite audible, right? Let's increase that to have a better effect. And let's put this to half, so it's not that annoying. What we can do is now say, okay, this modulation should be affected by something else, something like an envelope. So let's take envelope 2, pull this down like we would do for a filter cutoff modulation, a common one. Go to matrix, and as auxiliary source, let's choose envelope 2. And can you see what's happening? It starts with the modulation, and then as it goes to 0, it stops with the modulation. So now let's turn this up again to 1/8 note, or even higher. So this is how this auxiliary source is affecting the main modulation. So you have, if we take a look at this envelope, now we don't have to think about this as, you can actually do, it's not an amplitude, it's just a value. So you have 0, again, percentage, like for cutoff modulation, 0% at the bottom, 100% at the top. It goes up to 100% of this modulation. So this modulation is working 100%, so it's working like intended. Then it's dropping to 0%. And as you can see, this knob is moving fast. Let's increase the decay. And it's moving slightly to 0 where it's not moving at all. So this is how you can change something like this tremolo effect. And if you don't want this tremolo to be at the beginning, but at the end, so we could either invert this envelope, but we could also just use this invert function. So now it starts with no modulation and increases to 100% modulation because this value is inverted. It comes in with 100%, and the invert mod converts it to 0. So it starts with 0 modulation and goes up to 100 modulation. Okay, I hope that's understandable. Otherwise, just ask. And you can say bypass as well. So the auxiliary is not affecting that at all. And this is by default, and just do that. And it's continuing, okay? So this is the mod function right here, the modulation of the modulation. So yeah, you can say it's the modulation of the modulation. It's determining how the auxiliary source is affecting this main modulation right here. And again, you have a curve where you can change the behavior of the aux source. It works exactly the same as in right here. You have the source and the curve for that. It's kind of confusing right here because I think it should be in different order, but whatever. You have this curve that is related to this auxiliary source. Okay, so let's add this envelope again. We can change this. So it's moving faster. So it's going high, very high, and then going to 0, okay? So it's just a way how we can, again, with one further step, change how the modulation works. So let's click that, or can make it more sharp, this tremolo effect in this case. So let's click or hold Control and click on this again to reset that. And now we have something like an output. So let's see what is happening when we move that. First up, let's delete this. So as you can see, when I click this, you have this indicator that says LFO1 assigned to a volume. And if I put this to 0, we don't have any modulation. If you put this all the way to 100, it's by default that we have 100% modulation. So this is actually limiting this range. And this could be useful if you did some complex mapping right there and you don't want to go and change this one here. You can just say, okay, limit this to 50%, 25%. I don't want it to be hard. Or just listen to that and say, okay, yeah, I think that much is cool. And go back. You could do this with this one as well, but it doesn't work that well if you have something like an automation auxiliary source, I'm sorry. So when you have something like that, or something like that, say, okay, you can actually do something like this. Kind of works similar, in most cases it works similar to the amount, but I think for basic understanding right now, it's quite fine that you just say, okay, you can choose how much modulation is actually being used. Okay, so now let's delete that one. You have the option to sort this row right here, because if you just map some stuff like randomly to the, what did I do? I have absolutely, why is this now flipped? Did I change something? I have no idea. I don't care. We don't have any mapping right here, but if we just map this to random things, we have some weird sounds right now probably. But you can map this to the sub panning as well, the tune, all that stuff. And you can see, okay, there are a lot of mappings right here. And you can say, okay, let's sort this by source. In this case, we only have one source, obviously. We can, but this is also the default sorting right here. We can sort this by destination. Okay, with A, B, noise, oscillator, sub oscillator. Okay, makes sense to sort this that way. We can lock the matrix. And in here it says keep assignments on preset change. And what it does is basically it doesn't log the amount. It actually logs the mappings when you change the preset. So as you can see, it's now selected, and we can say, okay, let's open up, I don't know, like the patch that we have in this project, the first lead. And you can see all those modulations are still there. And I can select a different one as well. Let's see two. And it's still there. Only those LFOs that have been already patched that. So this preset has LFO1 being mapped to the wavetype position and volume with a certain amount. And this amount is being changed because this value, this modulation has been mapped to that in the preset originally. But all those other modulations like LFO to volume and unison blend, and also B unison detune, we added in before set lock, and those have been applied to the new patch as well, okay? When I now select the next one, you can see those are being set to 0 again because we don't have any LFO mappings by default there. And those are the default mappings that we had in the setup that we had before, but without any mount, okay? So now we can unlock this again, initialize the preset, there we go. And there's something that's called create vibrato unused LFO pitch via wheel. So let's select this. Okay, you can see it now kind of automatically mapped LFO1, as you can see here, unused LFO. In this case, we didn't use any LFOs. So if I remove that again and say, okay, LFO is affecting no, don't. Let's just use the level right here. And now we say, okay, use that. He uses LFO2. In this case, he uses LFO2, which is going up and down, based on the mod wheel. So this mod wheel is right down here. So if we turn up the mod wheel, we have this typical vibrato effect based on the pitch. And I can go to my keyboard right here and play this down. And as you can see, we can change the pitch vibrato with this mod wheel on my keyboard as well. Now, of course, I have something like a vibrato effect with the volume in here. We don't want to do that because it's more obvious that way. So we have, again, when we do that, now LFO1 and LFO2 both affecting this. So we probably don't want to do that. We only want to use, that was one step too far, create vibrato, LFO1, and now if I play that, you can hear it's changing the pitch vibrato based on how far the modulation wheel is being pulled up or pulled down. Pull down, 0 modulation, pull up, 100% modulation. So the pitch is always shifting up and down, which creates this vibrato effect. And it's actually using the master tune. And the master tune is one of those things as a destination that you can't choose by dragging something on there. So this is because this is a option in this drop-down menu. You can't use LFO and drag this on the master tune knob because there is no master tune knob right here. Even if we go into the global section, we don't have the possibility to drop or drag this LFO to something that says master tune. This is why we have, when we click on this, the drop-down menu, global, and we can actually change the destination and map it to something that isn't available in the UI, which would be something at the master tune. When we take a look at the amp, put the don't use the mod wheel. You can see, okay, I would think by default that this is the amp, but this is the master volume. So amp actually is the amplitude of all oscillators combined, which you can affect by this. So now that we are in the matrix, we can actually use velocity control, use this as our source. So let's choose velocity control right here. By the way, I don't know why it's called node hashtag. I think that's a typo that they just left in there because it's kind of funny. But let's go to velocity, and based on the velocity, I can now change the volume of the node that is played by only selecting the amp without mapping everything to the level, okay? So I know I could have shown you this in the velocity section, which is 2 lectures before, but I thought, yeah, let's just cover the matrix first and then give you an extra nice feature how you can use the velocity and also node control, of course, and pretty much any other thing to control the amp, because this is focused on the amplitude and not on the velocity. You know what I mean by that? Thinking, okay, it doesn't matter. This is how the way how you can control the master the master volume of all, the master amplitude, the master level of all oscillators individually but combined. So you're not controlling the master volume of the summed audio, you're controlling each level of those oscillators by choosing the amp in the global. Okay, and again, even though this is the global tab, you don't have any global amp or master tune knob that you could use right here. And also in the main UI, there's no. So yeah, that's one thing. Then you have the global chaos rate 1 and 2. And in this case, actually, these are available here. So you have the chaos rate, and I think we will cover the chaos rate in the advanced section. So let's leave it by now as it is. And as you can see, you can select every parameter that is available in your Serum and map it to this one. And you have something that's called constant. Constant is just the default, which says, okay, nothing. So I think it could just be called none, but it's called constant and 3 dashes in a row. So yeah, that's so much about the matrix right here. You can choose all different types of things right here. That is something that is called node on random 2, node on alternative 2. You got the macros, which is in this case, again, obvious, pitch band, which is obvious, but then you have something like MPEX, MPEY, pan and timbre, and MPEZ for pressure. Those are X, Y, Z coordinates. Relative velocity, or not relative, I'm sorry, release velocity, and fixed. So those are more complex things that you probably won't use. As this is focused on beginner, I don't want to overcomplicate anything and leave those aside for now. If you're interested in this, I will create an extra video and upload this to the bonus section. Let me know if you're really interested in that, because it's more, you need a little bit of technical background for this one. And I think we're fine with that for now. So this is what the matrix is for. You can see which parameter, which envelope, which LFO, velocity control node, whatever you have mapped to which destination, which type it is. You can change from unipolar to bipolar or bipolar. You have the possibility to change this modulation based on an auxiliary source and change the mode from normal to inverted, or bypass that modulation completely. You can change the way, the steepness of the modulation, so you can change from going linearly to both ways, getting sharper or less sharper, spending more time at the beginning or the start ending point. You can change the range, how the complete modulation is actually affecting the destination by using the output, and all that fun stuff. By the way, you don't have endless mapping slots available. You can see we have this very long modulation row. I just for fun try to map all those, and as soon as I hit the last one and try to add another one, which is actually pretty difficult to do, to find so much useful destinations that actually make sense modulating and not messing up the complete sound. But as soon as you get all those slots filled up, Serum shows you an error and says, okay, you don't have any modulation slot left. I don't think that you ever will, for like a serious patch, you will need this much of modulations, but technically you are limited to, I don't know even how many slots those are. I think a couple of them, you're limited to them, but they are far enough to create some nice modulated sounds. Okay, so now we covered everything regarding the matrix. Next step, we will take a quick look at automatic and voice